Hi everybody, I'm Sally Gunnell. I was 400 hurdler and as the only woman to hold Olympic, World, European, Commonwealth and break the world record all at the same time back in the early 90s, so a long time ago, but great memories. So some great questions here. First one is, what does it mean to be one of the few British athletes to have achieved the Grand Slam of holding all four major titles at the same time? I think it's not until you retire that you start looking back at all those things and what you've achieved. I think I was very lucky to have won the hardest one first, which is that Olympics. So the others sort of just rolled on, and I just had an amazing sort of 3 or 4 years where I was fit and I was healthy and I was able to do that. So yeah, sometimes I still have to remind myself that I actually did all those things, and especially when we have the sort of group around, you realize just how hard it is really. So yeah. What era do you think is more competitive, your era or this era? I think it's about the same. I think it's often about depth of the event, and of course if you look at the 400 hurdles, there was some great talent at the time with Sandra and Janine Vickers and Tanya Buford and people like when I was running, and now obviously there's so much depth at that world record pace as well. So I think it often depends on the actual events, and often you have that, don't you, that flow of some events stronger and others are weaker for a few years. So I think it's just as competitive as ever. Did you have any motivational problems after winning the Olympic gold? No, I think it changed. It wasn't so much motivation. I think I was all of a sudden propelled into, I was scared of failure. And I had to change the mind concept of all of a sudden, not being a favourite to being a favourite. And I think that's where that whole piece around failure was like, oh gosh, I didn't want that to be. And that's why I trained hard. And I set myself new challenges and goals straight away after that Olympics. And I think that really helped. And I always just remember my coach, Bruce Longdon, saying to me, you're only ever as good as your last race, which is just so true. And that gets you out training because you just realise that. What made you switch from 100 hurdles to 400 hurdles? What is your choice of your coach or someone else suggesting it? It was the choice of my coach, and I just won the 100-meter hurdles in the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh, and he just sort of said to me, he said, it's great, but it's not world class, and probably ranked me, I don't know, 20th in the world or something like that. And he was the one that just said, look, I think you'd make a great 400 hurdler. And I just remember thinking, God, that's a horrible event. And it hurt, and why would I want to do it? I'd done the heptathlon, which was horrible and hurt, and then I'd done the lovely 100 hurdles, which was amazing. But it was, I didn't know whether I could do it. I didn't know whether I liked it, and we just tried it, and he was so right. And I guess because I was technically good and I had basic strength, it was just, and it was the speed that was in there, and it just clicked within sort of 3 or 4 races almost. So yeah, whether he had that planned in his mind for years beforehand, I wouldn't be surprised. What goes through your head when hitting a hurdle? Hitting a hurdle is just the norm. It always happens. And I think the thing is that you're doing it all the time in training, you're doing it in racing, and it's to not go to the negative and give up. And I think that's what I learned over the years. It's like, it's part and parcel of it. You just got to get back into it. And I think the number of times that I was able to do that and get back into my stride pattern and get back into the race, then the better. And it's a mindset thing rather than just think, I've hit a hurdle, give up. It was like, right, get back into it. And I had to trigger that in my mind almost. And sometimes I used to cross the line and look down at my knee and go, oh, hang on a minute, that must have really hurt, because I don't know, you're just so engrossed in the race that you just move on. I think in some respects, I think that the stuttering was sometimes the hardest thing that put you off, and when you don't get that stride pattern, that's the drain bit. That's probably almost worse than hitting a hurdle. From all of your incredible achievement in athletics, what is the one moment race that gave you the most satisfaction? I think do you know what? There's probably three really. One is obviously that Olympics, because it is something that I dreamt about. It's the ultimate. It's only every 4 years, and you know, it's hard to get. I think the following year, when I broke the world record and won the Worlds, there were so many things that went against me. There was, you know, being ill, the pressure, expectation, and nearly didn't get onto the start line. And I just learned so much about myself, about mental strength, mental ability, and just belief. And I think it blew me right away. But, you know, I love that. And I think one of the other highlights was, I think it was the World Cup and it was the final points in the relay on the last leg at Gateshead. And it was just the most amazing feeling to be part of that team, and not just the relay team, but the whole of the Great Britain team, and to captain it. And it was just, yeah, and we did amazing. And I think that was such a real highlight for me as well. Have Sally ever considered commentary career on TV? I did. I was 10 years working for the BBC, which I absolutely loved. And then in the end, I guess I left John at home with 3 young boys, and then athletics was on every weekend. So we were all over the world and all over the country, across countries, indoors, you know, all major championships. And yeah, and it was hard leaving the kids and John with 3 young boys. So decided that after 10 years, I'd had an amazing time just being on that front line, punditing, and then doing the interviews as well in Athens and things like that. So it was unbelievable, but it was time to move on as well. Do you think you train too hard, and would you train more stroke less now if in the same position? I think I was train exactly the same. You know, I had the results that I needed. I think little things that I probably would have changed is knowing as you get older, and as the niggles and the injuries come, but realizing you don't have to train to the extent that you were, and that it's sort of in the bank, and just being much more targeted with the type of training. So that would have been towards the end. But yeah, I mean, I knew I had to train hard, and I loved it. And, you know, and I loved that feeling when I finished. I didn't like the feeling when it was going on, but I loved that feeling when it was finished. So no, I wouldn't change anything. How were you monitored by your coach, and what tools and sessions were applied to measure progress? So we would have key sessions that we did. It wouldn't be all the time. You know, we'd race indoors in the winter because that was a bit of a target of how much work we'd done. We would never do it, you know, off of a main thing. We'd do it just ease down for a couple of weeks. So that gave us a target of whether we'd put the hard work in. And then I would have a few key sessions that I would do before I'd go out there and race. And one of them was a 400 hurdles over 12 hurdles. So I knew exactly sort of what times I had to hit to be able to do that. And they just gave me just markers. And we always used to do a 300 session. It wasn't on the track, it was sort of on the gravel, and I could see the progression. And that was sort of like a weekly session that we do. So you could see the progression on that, which was a key one. So yeah, we didn't do lots of measuring. We didn't do lots of, you know, sports psychology, physiology or anything like that. It was much more done by the actual sessions and how I felt. And I was very much on somebody that had to have consistency and, you know, and putting it in the bank. So I knew if I had a good 3 months of, you know, training consistently, then I knew I was up there and I wasn't far off. What was your favorite and least favorite training sessions? My favorite training session are hill sessions. And I still do them now because I just love them. And I guess, I don't know, they hurt for a bit, don't they? But I quite like the speed of them and the jog back and stuff like that. And I think that was a real key session as well. My worst session was Oh yeah, horrible. The long track session of the week. It was always the killer. It was always the one that was on the training plan. I'd have my training plan 3 months of it ahead of me. So I used to look at some of these sessions thinking, oh, absolutely dread that session. And it probably would have been an up and down session. So I probably would have started at 200 and gone up to 600 and then back down with sort of like 3-4 minutes recovery at the top end and a bit shorter on the way down. So yeah, it was just about timing it right and, you know, and just making sure that you hit it right. So that was probably the worst. How much coaching does Sally do in athletics now? I leave that very much to John and the elite group down here, but I'm usually a bit of a sounding block. You know, we were just talking just now about, you know, training camps and races and trying to plan this year for Tokyo. So yeah, you know, even though I'm not on the front line and you know, sometimes hold the stopwatch if there's, you know, a few people doing different sessions, but he makes all the sessions and puts all the work in, and I'm just a sort of like the sounding block and what do I think and stuff like that, which is, I think, is a great teamwork. Would Sally have won an individual or a team Olympic gold medal? Definitely individual. I always remember, you know, at school playing in, I don't know, the hockey team or the netball team, and I was always like, why isn't everybody, you know, doing the same and working hard? Why? I felt like I had to always pick everybody up and run around. So I was much more of an individual person. I like to take responsibilities for my own actions, and, you know, and even though I had an amazing team of people that got me there with the coach and psychologist and all these other people, which was so key. You know, it was, I guess on the day, it was me that had to perform. And if I didn't, it was me that mucked up. It wasn't anybody else. And I liked that feeling and took full responsibility. But don't get me wrong, I love the relay. And, you know, after doing an individual event, the relay was just so much fun, and you could look around, you could, you know, have the camaraderie. I would chat, which I didn't used to chat very much before a race or anything like that. But on this occasion, after doing the individual, I just love the relay. So yeah, probably, but yeah, it's definitely an individual.